My name is JT Van Zant. I'm a fly fishing guide on the Gulf Coast of Texas. Being on the water has always been the secret to unlocking my soul. I just feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing in this life. And that feeling inspires deep thought and conversations with my clients, who are all of varied backgrounds. I truly enjoy sharing perspective on the human experience with folks I take fishing. Drifting, a YETI Presents podcast, was created with the goal of capturing those candid conversations with people who inspire me and sharing them with an audience that has the same sort of restlessness and curiosity that I do. I have found that the best way to provide wisdom and hope for future generations is to learn from the folks that have blazed the trail before us and have made tough decisions in the pursuit of living an extraordinary life. I hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening to Drifting. Dan Malloy is the youngest of the three Malloy brothers, and like his brothers Chris and Keith, Dan is a man of many talents. Perhaps the most naturally gifted surfer of the bunch, he's also the most sensitive, and therefore is probably the one I identify with the most. Competitive surfing never felt right to Dan. He literally didn't enjoy it, which is crazy to hear, because he was voted at one point top performer of the year by his peers. Regardless, surfing for Dan was not about competition. He preferred to have waves all to himself, and he still does. He opened up to me about life as the youngest Malloy brother, growing up in Ojai, the music he loves, and also about his personal bout with depression. A sensitive topic, but one he was willing to share. Rather than turn to drugs or alcohol, he focused on making a simple life for himself and sticking to what he loves. Dan currently runs an urban farm in his hometown of Ojai. He still surfs and hunts and raises animals and farms, and he writes great songs along the way too. Dan Malloy. Do you have anything specifically for Dan you want to hear?
I'm interested to hear the true versions of the stories that I've been hearing for the last 6 years. I'd like some clarification.
Just for the record, I revise history. I'm a divisionist.
You guys get lost, dude. We got like an hour right now, Chris.
Real quick. I
You
haven't talked enough.
This is neat that you're doing this.
Thanks, man.
It's such
I don't
a
know
great-
what I'm doing,
Well, it's
but
such
I
a
am
neat
sort
forum.
of fascinated in the conversations, especially getting to meet the likes of you guys. It's just been a real treat for me.
You know you're on the right path when like that's what I feel like the filmmaking stuff, and I'm just following along with those guys. But is it when you're getting to be around people that really inspire you? You know, like you are getting to be around things that are leading you in new directions and stuff. That's when I'm like, yeah, I'm doing the right thing. You know.
What do you take away from your older brother Chris saying straight up that like Dan's technically and just by soul the best surfer out of all of us?
Oh, are we rolling? Okay. Yeah, I mean,
And we have been rolling.
Oh, cool. Yeah, good. Yeah, you know, surfing just came super natural to me, and I really, I don't know what it was. I just always, it was kind of the one thing that I just could do and felt really at home out there, you know, and then, so I don't know when Chris says that, you know, there was, it felt natural to me. So I just kept doing it and you know, but it's an interesting deal because, you know, being in the ocean is nothing feels more like home. And at the same time, it's just like, it's become something to me that is just like what I do when I'm not working or when I'm not with my family, or, you know, I really, it's just recreation at this point now, and I go out there when I need to blow off some steam or just get in the water, and it's a real natural thing for me, but I also kind of let go of the whole side of trying to make it into my main obsession. You know, it's like I'm not totally obsessed with it anymore. I just do it when I can.
What did the earliest memories from a kid who always wanted to be a surfer and just like totally idolized the culture? but never had the opportunity. What was the earliest days in the, like, do you remember as a child getting pushed on the board by your old man and that turning into you feeling like you could paddle into a wave? And
Yeah, that was a really fun time. I mean, that was like the purest time for sure. Is those first few summers when it was like bunch of us would go down to the beach, hang out all day in the summer times, and those first few summers were definitely like what you're almost always trying to get back to before almost all the sponsorships and all that stuff came into play. That was really fun time too, but you realize the more time goes on, you're like, wow, those first few years when you're just catching waves on boogie boards and messing around with your friends, kind of like trying different things and going like, check it out, I did this and I can do it again, and you're just riding waves. And then, getting a little further out the back and getting pushed into a wave and going, wow, that's what that feels like. And then all of a sudden one day you get pushed into a wave and you're on that open face where it's like all green and you feel that glide and you're like, okay, that's a whole nother level. And then it's, starting from the time you're a kid, there's those super pure moments. And then there's all the other kid moments where you're just like competing with your friends. You're like, I did an off the lip, check this out, and it's, and that part of it was really fun too. And all the competition, when you start getting into competition and you get all stoked on a sponsorship and, some guy gave me a t-shirt and like, it's all wrapped up. Like surfing's been part of my whole life. So you think about any part of your development as a kid, and surfing, that was part of it too. It wasn't just this pure thing through and through. It was those first few summers, but then some guy comes around and he's like, hey, I'll give you some stickers. And you're like, all of a sudden you take a bite of the apple, you're like, I always joke, some guy was like, gave Chris a whole pack of stickers and it was like all downhill from there. You're like, what? Okay, I'm going to serve better and better and better.
That's when you were corrupted.
That's when you were corrupted. That was like, I sometimes joke that like standing up on a surfboard is like the fall in a way. Because before you ride waves, body surfing or on a boogie board, and you just have the biggest grin in the world. The moment you stand up on a surfboard, you kind of all of a sudden are going, am I doing it right? There's like this self-awareness that kind of, surfing's amazing, but I kind of laugh that like the moment you stand up, you're like, is what I'm doing right? And is my style right? And am I doing everything? And in a way, I've been stripping all that back for the last 10 years or so going, there's, some people will get really into the technicalities of it all, what boards you're riding, how you're riding them, all this stuff. And I can't really do it. I'm just like, man, we have this crazy chance in this weird time where we got enough on our plates to go out there and mess around in the ocean. Like I can't really talk about for too long about whether you're doing it right or wrong.
Isn't that reserved though for some of the people without that particular level of natural ability? Mm-hmm. Where they've got to pick it apart technically and be involved in it and be passionate about all those nuances.
Yep.
But then there's dudes that can hop up and you go, God, look at that guy. How beautiful is that?
Yeah.
And you're that guy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there's definitely that thing where, I'm really enamored actually by the shapers and all those people who have so much conviction about these ideas and different designs and stuff. I've always had a different perception when I go surfing, and people are like, this design does this exactly and this does this, and I've never had to really like I don't know, when I go surfing, there's just something else that makes me have a good time, and it's not always the board, it's not always the equipment, it's something else. So but it's been a blessing and a curse the way my enjoyment out of surfing, because if I could get a lot of enjoyment out of competition, that was almost the funny little bit of a curse of my natural ability, is that I had really high expectations for myself, and so did my peers, that I would do really, really well in competition. And I kind of had my sights set on that because my favorite surfer in the world was doing that. and that didn't really pan out. And and there's this, my peers were they were a little older, but guys I got to hang out with, my idols, Kelly Slater and Shane Dorian and all these guys, and they were doing that all on the highest level, and something in me just wasn't quite connecting with competition, and I didn't have the conviction that those guys had to compete on a really high level. There was something pulling me. I was telling you, I think last night, like I didn't believe in what I was doing quite enough. I was thinking a little too much about it. I was going, spend your whole life working in this one direction, trying to win a competition, and I would win a competition or do really well, and I would get home that night and go, I don't feel any better than I did before. I don't know if it's all right there, And so anyway, so it kind of took me off in a different direction, and I don't know, it was an interesting experience, wanting that super bad and then realizing that you don't really got it in you.
Well, it's as a young age, were you seeing your brothers surf well before you're even really capable of catching a wave on your own?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely were surfing pretty good by the time I was.
You mentioned hanging out with all your friends. So did you have your own group of friends you surfed with, and so did Keith and so did Chris?
No, we had.
Or did y'all surf together in one big crowd?
We all hung out together. So there was another family with 3 brothers. And we were all like kind of same ages, and then cool. A few other friends outside of that, and we'd all go down to the same beach every summer. We kind of thought that was the only beach on the planet, and we were all in the same zone. And that's one thing I will say for both Chris and Keith, my brothers, is when they got their license, to drive, I was in the car with them all the time. They didn't just bail, which I found out later is not all the time the case, So as soon as Chris got his license, we lived half an hour from the beach, and we were just in the car together all the time. So we would see what each person was doing, and we were hanging out, just all little group of friends. It was rad.
When did the competitive aspect of it become too much, and you were like, man, I'm just not feeling this?
Well, you know what, with competition, yeah, I definitely had some pretty high expectations for myself, and so did the crew I was running with and my sponsors and stuff like that. And I did it for a few years, and at that time in surfing there weren't like a lot of coaches and teams, and like it wasn't really, me and Keith were just on tour. We'd pick the events we would want to do, and we were trying to qualify for the big leagues, And I had a bad injury after I kind of worked my way up and got a really good seed, and I was really close to qualifying. And then I was surfing big waves in Hawaii and blew my shoulder out real bad, and had to have surgery. And so that took me out for the whole next year. And at that time, it was kind of like, how much do I care about this? Because I'm going to have to go through that whole process again of like getting a good seed so that I can qualify and doing all this stuff. And, it was a combination of things, but it was also, I got to travel with some of the best. So after the injury, that was the point where it was like, hey, what do you want to do with your time? And, what was interesting though, is I had just been on tour with people I looked up to a ton. And one of those people was, I watched Andy Irons, who was a three-time world champ. I watched his trajectory and what he did and how bad he wanted it. And that guy was just an absolute freak. He was amazing. I saw him go from somebody who was a really great surfer, but someone who I didn't see having world title potential, want it so bad that he became one of the greatest surfers of all time and one of my favorite surfers. We were the same age, and I saw the conviction in him, and I just saw, I saw it was a different thing. He believed in what he was doing, and he believed in winning, like he really believed in winning. And that's the same with Kelly too, like winning is a really important thing. And
why be in competition if you don't have that, right?
Exactly. So I saw that clear with those guys, and I just simply flat out didn't really believe in what I was doing, like it was, maybe that's because I wasn't winning enough.
I guess too, if you think about it, right, for you to have the ability to even study someone else's conviction probably meant that, right,
Yeah.
that it wasn't going on in your own head. You're looking around in the classroom going, man, everyone's studying harder than me.
Yeah. I remember doing those contests and just tearing apart the whole system, and just going, wow, this is a lot of time spent working on trying, this like kind of pretty selfish pursuit. But I've also grown now that I haven't been, that was a long time ago. I've really grown to appreciate what it means to other people. And like, I've grown to go like, oh, that's, they're doing that thing and they're doing it well. And there's a lot to that. And I respect it now more than I did at the time. But I just, there was something in me that wasn't clicking. When I would do really well, I would question that, just as much as when I did poorly. And I just I've always had that in me a little bit where I'm
your own self-critic, your
own
worst critic, right?
Exactly. So it's been an interesting, kind of road, but just, surfing is and will always be a huge part of my life. I have kind of.
You were surfer of the year. At
Oh,
one point, right?
I got in what I got was in the surfer pole deal. I got in the top 10. I think that's what it was, which was,
That's
for me,
huge.
it was a big deal. Yeah. Cause you're looking at all these heroes and stuff, and so that was a really big deal for me. And that was, just an honor, coming from, a little town in Ojai and just wanting to be a part of it super bad. We wanted to be a part of it really bad. My brothers and I, we were like, we weren't that far, we're from, the very northern part of Southern California. But to us, we felt a million miles away because our dad wasn't like, he wasn't like a little league dad trying to get us involved. My folks were really supportive, but we just felt a million miles away from the industry. And so we kind of dove in head first, psyching from the time we were little kids, just going, this is it. This is what it's all about. And we put a good, 15, almost 20 years into that world. And then, we kind of saw it up close and personal. And in the last 10 years, we've been kind of like taking a little time away from it. We learned what we needed to learn from that stuff and have kind of moved on.
Do you think you were a little guilty being better than your older brothers? I'm sure they had to be heroes to you. Did you feel like you were taking the spotlight from them and you're too modest and you just like, I don't want to make them look bad by being so good?
Well, I'm not exactly like that, but I know that I didn't like beating my brothers in contests, and that wasn't always, doesn't matter how good you are, you can get beat by somebody, and Keith was a really good surfer, really good competitor.
It's not your day, right?
Yeah. And, but it was just funny. I looked at, like, I was talking about Andy Aarons earlier. He has a brother and they're the most competitive people ever with each other. We didn't have that with each other, and I didn't have it with my brother Keith. For some reason I didn't have that thing where I was like, I want to kick your ass in this surf contest. It seems like this arbitrary, weird thing to me. I never really could get totally on board with it.
Fired up about that.
Yeah, it just wasn't natural for me to get into that,
I don't know if I could win a contest at anything, but I never tried to enter a contest. I didn't know, still don't know really what I was put here to be. The fishing thing that I do, I chased it and I love it and I still love doing it. But I feel that there's a bigger picture out there for me that I haven't really kind of stumbled across yet.
Yeah. Well, I'm right there with you, man.
I'm caught up in the process of elimination my whole life, essentially.
Yeah.
Tell me about your injury. What exactly happened? Where was it? And what kind of wave crushed you? Like, what happened? So
it was, I think it was January. It must have been, I don't know, it was about 15 years ago now. And I paddled out to, it was on the North Shore of Oahu. It's a place called Himalayas. And I paddled out there. I had some friends drop me off. It was a really big day, pretty big day. And it's this place. It's an outer reef, so it's way the heck out there.
It's like a mile.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, it's out there. It's out there. And paddle out. There's a couple guys out there, and I just took off on a nice big one and just ate shit. I just basically fell backwards, bouncing down the face of this, probably real big wave, and I tried to dive to get underwater, and I just skipped. So my arm got underwater and my body skipped. So it just went boom, and I just tore the labrum. I tore that socket real bad. So my shoulder was hanging, dislocated it real bad. And I was like, dislocated my shoulder. I've seen people do that. And in the movies, they put it back in and keep going. I'm like, I'll be fine, once I get it put back in. So I get to the beach and hitchhike to the hospital. They put it back in. I'm like, cool. I'll be good to go. I'm going to compete this year. The whole deal is on. And then, I go to see the doctor and they're like, you need surgery and it's going to be 6 to 7 months. And I'm like, what? So it was a game changer for sure. And, but it also was an interesting, it was the first time in my life that I just stopped for 5 months and just was like, I got surgery and did all that. And it was like, what kind of helped me to step back a little bit and go like, what's important to me, and not that I figured it out during that time, but it was pretty clear at that point, like how little I thought about competition and how little I was like, oh, that's all I want to do. I almost didn't think about competition once that whole time. And I was like, ooh, that's not a good thing if that's what I'm doing.
Right.
So it was a turning point for sure. And that was the beginning of kind of like, at that, right after that year, I took time. I stopped competing right after that and started just working on surf films, which was really fun. I got to make surf films with my brothers. I got to make surf films with a guy named Thomas Campbell from California that makes these really, really fun surf films.
Right.
And ride whatever. Like that's what, it was kind of this neat time in surfing where people were really starting to experiment with different boards and all sorts of alternative surf craft. So it was a really neat time to step off, trying to compete and just mess around and go surfing and be working on fun projects, so.
And didn't you pick up on like ancient type surfboard designs and start riding purely aesthetic?
Well, there was really neat push where this guy, Tom Wegener, it was actually there were a handful of different people making these beautiful old boards called Alayas. And they're like, it looks like this table right here, it's
just
like
a plank, right?
It looks like a plank, and in the old photos of the ancient Hawaiians, that they have the drawings, and then there's a couple photos of a guy that, everybody thought, oh, that was like a belly board or something, oh, that was just like going
like a round tip, and they're not very long.
No, and they're
almost look like a skimmer.
That's what
board.
It looks like.
Yeah.
And so I think my understanding is that for a long time everybody just thought that that's what they were. But these guys started making replicas in modern times, and I think some of the guys were making them just to make them, just to kind of have them. And the way that I got into it is this guy Tom Wegener was making them, and then he was making them out of this like pretty light wood, the Paulownia wood, light, strong wood. And I think the story goes that he was making some for belly boarding, and he went down one day and his kids or some other kids at the beach just started standing up on him, and the light went on. Like they weren't laying down on him in ancient Hawaii. They weren't going straight. They were riding, like they were doing like high performance, not what we consider high performance now, but way more
making
advanced
turns and stuff.
Yeah, and going really fast down the line and maybe getting in the tube and all that. And my understanding is we thought that came way much later. And so a bunch of our generation started riding them, and they are just an absolute blast. And in the right waves, they're the fastest boards I've ever ridden. in a very specific situation, and just, you're out there with a pair of board shorts and this little plank of wood, and you're catching waves and going, what feels like 100 miles an hour, you're actually going whatever.
Back to that purity for you.
Yeah, you're standing on a plank of wood, out in the ocean, no modern technology, and you're just, it's really, really fun. It's difficult. It's really, technically, it's
Do they even have
challenging.
a fin on them?
No fin. So
Wow.
what it is that the wood is so much less buoyant than foam, and the way they're shaped and they're narrow and flat, is that the edge of the board acts as the fin because it's sinking more, and so you get a little bite from that.
So you're on the edge, almost like a
snowboard.
Snowboard.
Yep, it's absolutely just like a snowboard. You're on edge, just like that, and just a total blast. And I was obsessed with that for a couple of years. I still love them. And when I get a chance, when the waves are just right, I'll ride them. And it's just one of my favorite ways to surf by far. And you're just going straight, or I do anyway. There's some kids who kind of shred on them, do all this different stuff. But I just go straight, and it's just this unbelievable planing experience.
It probably hisses different, and like the sound of that edge and everything.
I don't really hear stuff when I surf. Some people do, but it's just plain. You're just flying. I mean, that's what surfing feels like. It feels like you're flying.
Yeah.
You're just like, it really does. Body surfing and surfing, it's like when you're planing well, it's pretty amazing feeling,
I got 2 boys that I am so intent on them learning to surf.
We'll bring them out. I was just saying I'm gonna do this music trade with a buddy of mine.
I picked up on that. He's probably a lot better than me, but maybe there's a note or two I can throw in for trade.
we can figure out a trade for sure. But no, I think it's really fun these days, especially at home in California. The waves aren't that good very often, so I get a little bit like, it's kind of crowded at some of the spots, and so sometimes I'm like definitely looking for motivation to get out there. So for me, it's really fun when some friends come in town to go to go teach, because it's just really fun to like be able to like be involved with those first few hours of someone getting their first waves and doing all that stuff. And it's a blast. So you guys were welcomed out to our place in California, and we'll show your kids a good time for sure. There's actually an amazing place in Ventura. It's just like Waikiki, not just like Waikiki. Waikiki is like the place, but it's got some similar things going on that make it unbelievable for learning specifically. So come ahead on, bring it on.
When you got the competition out of your head, I mean, literally, you're understating this, but you were the poll choice top 10 surfer in the world. That's super significant. So where did you have to go in your head after you decided like, this is not for me, competition's not for me? Like,
yeah,
where did that leave you?
Well, it left me in a kind of a trippy spot for sure. But I mean, I had a blast. I had a blast working on those films. But to be honest, like I hear people say, I've never had any regrets, and I've never I've never related to that too much.
Yeah.
I think about it a lot. Like, there's times when I'm like, man, fuck, I wish I would have put my head down and done that harder. And, I wish I would have you only have that window in this life. There's windows, you only can do that. And that was the window for that. And I didn't that, something led me away from that. And and that's all, I'm not saying I stew on it too much, but I think about it from time to time for sure. But where it led me after that was working on learning a lot more about filmmaking, because I was just on the road and the projects were always shoestring projects. So when you were surfing for these things, like you're also carrying cameras and running to get film and, helping out and learning just by being there. And that was really fun for me. And then getting to ride all these different, kind of opening my mind a little bit, because when you're competing, you're riding really conventional stuff, because everybody's kind of riding the same thing, and you don't want to take too many chances when you're training. You don't want to like try some other board that's going to like throw you off or whatever. So this was really great time to open things up. And around that time two is when my brothers and I started working for Patagonia. It was just a great deal to get to learn from those guys. And the departure from competition was directly like diving into the surf films and working with Patagonia. And a lot of what we're taught this day and age is like that what you have at home is not enough, like it's that, we all go to college, and I didn't go to college, but, and you're learning something that your parents didn't know, and to get out of there and like not be what your parents were. And that's a really weird thing. It's not like that's a pretty new deal. And I'm pretty, I don't know if you've read much Wendell Berry or know who he is at all, but
I know he is.
Yeah, I've really gotten into his work over the last 10 or 15 years, and Wes Jackson through him, and I think it's Wes Jackson who talks about like there should be in colleges we should be teaching kids like homecoming, like how to come home, how to live better where you live, how to take care of the communities and the old folks and the young folks, and it really has resonated with me. Like that has kind of blown my mind a little bit that we don't value that. Like it's been all about getting the hell away from where you grew up and what you do, and this new form of independence. Like, I feel like independence used to mean this thing where independence was you were independent of the government and independent of big corporations. You were fully dependent on your family and the natural environment around you and your farm and your community. That was independence before. It's not that you were independent of everything. You were just independent of these big outside forces. Now, independence means that you have like, an apartment with and you don't need your family, and you don't need community. And you don't need all of the things that are actually really the most important things in this life. And so it was really, starting to read Wendell Berry. I came across an article. I'd never heard of him in about 15 years ago. And it was in that little magazine called The Sun. Have you ever read that? And there was just an interview with him, and I was on a surf trip, and I came across this article, and, I don't say it much, but it changed my life. I was like, all this time I've been kind of questioning what I'm doing, and here's this guy just freaking spitting it out, and it's all right there. And he's saying all this stuff I kind of been thinking, and he says it perfectly. And I was like, holy shit. And I just kind of dove in and have been kind of following that path ever since then. And and there's a little place for that within the work that I've been doing at Patagonia, and I've been trying to bring some of that kind of reasoning in as much as possible, because I really believe in what those guys are espousing. It's really good stuff. And
you're living that.
You're
back home.
Trying to live it. Yep.
In OI and with a farm.
Yeah. So my wife and I got about 5 years ago now, we bought 4 acres. So it's a tiny little thing in Miners Oaks, California. And there's a combination of things going on. My wife's a really great teacher. She's got a goat herd, and we got some pigs and chickens. We got 65 chickens and citrus, and then we leased the back 2 acres to our friends who are doing organic veggies back there. And so we got a really neat partnership there. And we're kind of doing 2 things at once, which is, we're learning a ton ourselves, and we also want to be that opportunity for kids to learn about this stuff from a really young age. So from our house, there's 3 schools that can walk to our house, and we're already all looped in with the education system there, where they can come over anytime. A lot of it's like, if that light would have gone on, for me, if I read that stuff and was going down that path, if I had learned that and realized that's what I wanted to do, or be involved with at least, when I was 14 years old, I'm like, what if we could be that opportunity for some of these kids in Ohio who might not know that that's what they want to do, if they didn't come over to a farm and check it out and realize that there was something for him there, you know? So that's the way I look at it anyway, is like we get to learn and there's a chance that, you know, a couple kids a year will be like, holy shit, big part of my life is going to be working in agriculture. So kind of, preaching.
No, you know, I keep waiting on some big switch where everyone gets it.
Yeah.
But that's just not how it works.
Yeah.
You got to have community farms that take off and have a couple generations behind them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And y'all are impacting these young kids that come every day to see. I think you personally have a much better impact coming back as this pro surfer that gave up that life, because you can show the glamour of you were right on the cusp of what everyone's dream is, and it didn't work for you, and now you have goats and you're farming.
Yeah.
Which is not everyone's dream.
Well, it's funny because it's like we were kind of alluding to this last night, but I you know, have always just thought long and hard about things and had pretty solid lows where I really question the shit out of stuff. And it's always kind of been there. There's been a pretty dark shadow at times for me where I'm, you know, to be kind of blunt about it, kind of dealt with depression pretty heavily in my life. And the one thing, even when I am totally fucked, has stuck with me is that being in touch with the land like that and being involved with my community like that and seems meaningful.
Yeah.
When nothing seems meaningful.
Right.
And that's been this like weird silver lining, is like, you know, if you have real lows like that, it kind of, you know, it's a shitty thing. Wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but it definitely clarifies a few things, or at least when you come out of it. But it's like it really it's interesting to me that one thing, like being involved with my community, helping facilitate some farm activity, even though I've never been a real gifted farmer or anything like that. Like it being involved on that level with those people and the people closest to me has stayed meaningful. And so it's like
community, right?
Yeah. And it's you know, it's even like when it comes to music and all that stuff, or it's like we have a chance to do something unique in this life, and the closer to home you are, I don't know, there's something about like the more you're speaking the one thing, you know, the one thing that you can is like your experience, what you're doing, you know, the songs that are from where you're from the people, you know, like you have a chance to do something kind of authentic. And for me, I've tried to live other places, doing other things. And it's always I always just end up coming back home and trying to get it done there, and just, feel a little bit more like myself there, you know?
Depression is real, man.
It's radical.
Did you bring it on with drugs and alcohol, or
No.
was it just something in the blood?
It's in the blood for sure in my family. And no, that's a crazy thing, and kind of a confusing part about it, and also like kind of the good part about it was it came on hard, super hard, and really intense without drugs and alcohol. I mean, I had been drinking a tiny bit, but not like what it takes to go down.
Right.
And it freaking lit me up, and fast and hard, and for a long time.
Oh man.
So it was radical. But you know, what's funny is
I didn't
it's
know
like,
that about you.
Yeah.
man.
Well, not too many people, I don't talk about it too much, but it's been interesting because that was about 10 years ago, and wasn't expecting it. Was in a good zone in my life, healthy, working for a good company, had a cool girlfriend at the time, whole deal. Like none of the things. It was, you know, I think pretty darn genetic, but and just rattled me. And I'll say that for sure, is that not, you know, having community and good friends and family saved my life.
I'm glad to hear that.
Really unbelievable. but it's given me a whole new respect though too for what people deal with, for sure. Like, yeah, I see people on the streets now, and I'm like, have an entirely different respect for the shit that goes down.
Yeah, just empathy for that condition.
Yeah,
if you
man.
haven't felt it, you can't get out of bed and put your shoes on.
Man. And so, but it's been an interesting path and journey because, you know, I feel like I'm like still kind of in a way climbing out of the hole and finally kind of taking a little bit more responsibility for it. Because when something radical happens to you, you can either, you know, it's not your fault that it happened, but you're the only one that is responsible to deal with it.
Yeah, it is nonetheless. Right?
It is, and it's no one else's fault. And you can kind of, you know, be a victim to it. And I'm just kind of realizing that, you know, you're like, actually, those are the cards I was handed. And I either can like feel bad about it forever, or I can figure shit out and like start to, you know, get my bearings. And, but I, you know, when I look back, I think it's that shadow that's kind of been there has been a lot involved with a lot of my decisions in my life. And
it sounds like that was always there waiting to challenge you.
It
like
was. And I was,
maybe that was part of the confusion with your ability in surfing and what to turn it into. Like you just didn't see it.
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure. If you think about that, it makes perfect sense. Like you know, when you have that in you, you just question things and you're not there. The meaning's not there. So I wasn't finding that meaning. And,
I mean, you're constantly looking around, you see other people on the ball and it makes you feel even more out of place.
Yeah, it's a trippy deal. It's a really trippy deal, but you know, it's a weird thing where you're like, I, you know, would don't even want anybody to, you know, I know it's freaking epidemic levels too right now, how many people have dealt with that and are dealing with it. I would never want anybody to deal with it. Doesn't have to. And then there's this weird silver lining where it just forces you into a place that forces you into a zone that you basically have to grapple with the hardest questions, and it somehow brings you closer to your family and the people that are most important to you. And it's been a crazy journey. And yeah, I feel like I'm finally starting to take a little more responsibility and be like, you know what? It's my job. I got to get up, got to freaking figure it out, you know? And
you got a sparkle about you, man. It's real neat. And chickens, a yard full of chickens. You said 60 chickens?
Yeah. We got
it's hard to be bummed around chickens, isn't it?
Yeah. No, our place has been.
Think about being depressed and look outside and there's no chickens. Yeah. That's a much worse place than if there are at least a couple.
And that's why I'm lucky
plucking around.
That's why I'm lucky I've got my wife, because she holds down the fort in a really amazing way.
Tell us about Gracie.
Oh,
what's up with that girl?
She's awesome. She's just an ass kicker. She's just always working hard on something, and she's just awesome teacher and gets tons of kids out to the farm all the time. And she's one of those people that like literally her animals are more important to her than anything. When one of the goats is sick, she feels sick. She can't eat and stuff when one of the goats is sick. And so she's really, really into it. And kind of makes that whole operation work. And I mean, we together have been working on it for a while now, and it's our favorite thing in the world. We don't make a dime doing it, but we're trying to, because we know that's the important part of it.
Such a great model.
Yeah.
I mean, forget the surfing. I want to come out and learn about that.
Well, the best thing about it is that surfing feels better after you've worked all day.
Yeah.
That's when surfing's the funnest, is when you're actually washing the dust off.
See, my version too, and I don't know how clinically depressed I was versus just being lost alone and feeling like I had no talent, nowhere to belong. But when I realized that I wasn't going to be Townes Van Zandt, my father, right? It just left me like I'd already sort of screwed up at school. Business wasn't anything I understood or felt passionate about. And I don't know. I just came into fly fishing after a leg injury and it perked me up. And I just went with that feeling. I've been following it upstream ever since. But it's, you know, and I think there's a lot about the American model where we, like you said it perfectly, like we're supposed to leave home and do better than before. And the farther I look back in our history, the better it seems to me. Not because there's more people or we've, you know, live in an increasingly urbanized society, but having your hands in the dirt, there's just something really amazing about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's safe to say, like, we can get overly nostalgic and overly romantic about the past, but, you know, I don't by any means think that everything was better. I mean, people struggled really hard back then, but there was a connection that we have lost, you know, and that's important, I think, to the human experience. And I think that, you know, it's really hard. You know, Wendell Berry says it's impossible to quantify what we've lost in this modern day, and how we eat, not knowing all these things, where everything comes from. We have a real disconnect. And I think that, it's trying to get back to that source of figuring out where things actually come from. But kind of lost my way there a little bit, but
no, you said it perfectly.
Yeah, it's I was thinking about that because, I mean, very different predicaments, but being, you know, like, expectations are a radical thing, you know, and like what I was saying earlier, I was wondering, you know, must have been just coming, you know, being Towns' son must have just been radical. Like, I had a lot of expectations on me, and I was hanging out with people like Kelly Slater and Shane Dorian and all these people, and that's what I wanted to be. And you get these crazy expectations going, you want to live up to them, but that's just not in the cards all the time, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, what do you do with that? How do you recalibrate when you realize that's not the road that you're going down?
Is it safe? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's, how do you, you know, you have this whole thing projected and you're like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to be. And that freaking, you just one day you realize
But guys like me and you heap it on.
Yeah.
It's not like Shane or Kelly would have been disappointed in you if you shared with them, hey, this competition thing is not that meaningful to me. They would have been supportive of I know how they feel about you.
Yeah.
It's you and me. That distort ourselves, right?
Totally. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You get this big ball of pressure going. And so, but it's just, man, it's like,
no one expected me to be Townes Van Zandt.
Yeah.
I just rolled with him enough to see how much praise and how much, you know, how he affected people's lives with his songs. But then he wasn't in a position to treat himself better or really treat his family in a way that his songs indicate. Like, if you listen to his songs, that was the best of who he was.
Yeah.
The man himself was, he drank himself into oblivion, and everything that goes with that is underperformance in all categories. So he had this one thing down, but he didn't live in a way that emulated that message. I understood the message clearly. And then when he sort of disappeared, the fun went away. And I'm like, oh, well, let me pick it up. And other people are like, you should sing. You play guitar pretty good. And they don't realize that I never wrote a song.
Yeah.
I was not a prolific songwriter. I didn't learn to really play guitar or pick his songs until he died. And that was just so I could hear it. And that was a connection I had with him and a closeness I felt in singing and playing his songs for me. And it meant the world to me. And I still play his songs for my kids. My kids, 3 and 6, they love the idea that Granddad has music that they can hear. And I watch them getting close and talking about him as if they know him from the music. And that's a better route than actually knowing him was as a loved one, because that was super tough. And he was diagnosed with depression, bipolar disorder, and had shock treatments as a young man.
Yeah, my grandfather did too.
So I always said, man, you're not sick like he was, but that doesn't mean I wasn't dealing with the same beast, right?
Yeah.
And depression is so fucking hard.
Dude, yeah.
And I I like the idea that I've come out of it and that I'm respected for what I've stuck to.
Yep.
But I got so much further to go in terms of the man I want to be. And I've had a garden for about 10 years now.
Uh-huh.
Just a few raised beds, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've got these tomatoes that are on like their third. I kept thinking you have to go get more seedlings or, germinate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the tomatoes took over this one area so hardcore that they were just like on the loose, and I didn't even have the energy to plant tomatoes again, but they came back on their own because so many unpicked tomatoes fell. And look at me, I have no idea, right? That tomatoes can grow on their own from a seed. But going and picking your own ingredients just for salsa. And then you add perhaps killing a deer or a hog and bringing that home and knowing how to butcher that. And, I am no homesteader, but I
Me
dream
neither.
of that.
Yeah.
Like that is like, and it's hard work. You don't have much time to
Yeah.
look around.
What's that song? Homegrown Tomatoes?
Yeah, Guy Clark, exactly.
Guy Clark song.
Nothing in life competes with that.
Yeah, it's the truth. So I think we could use a little bit more of that going on for sure. But yeah, there's a lot to it, and it's been a fun run for sure.
And you surf when you want to.
Yeah, and I surf when surf. It's recreation. It's, Doc Paskowitz put it. It's if you take that word recreation, you go out and you when you need it, when you which isn't every day for me at this point, go out there and
Once a week?
yeah, at least once a week.
Okay.
At least once a week. Yeah.
Surfing is still a huge part of your life and who you are.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that a little more? I mean, are you comfortable? Like at one point you turned down like a Ralph Lauren gig, right?
Yeah.
You were about to be on a jet with supermodels and you were going to be the face of Ralph Lauren.
Well,
and Kelly called and said like, there's a swell across the world.
Well, there was just like, it was a funny little mixed up world where all of a sudden, I was, I think we were hanging with Kelly one day and there was, big time fashion photographer there. And then all of a sudden they were calling for some other stuff, and,
what was that other stuff?
That stuff was doing
to be the face of Ralph
Lauren. Modeling for freaking, which is just the weirdest world in the world. So I'm very thankful I had better opportunities than that. But yeah, so I mean, it wasn't that big of a decision not to, I did it a couple times. I was like, I'll go hang out with some real pretty girls. No problem. But when it came to like getting in the way of other stuff, it was pretty simple. I was like, I could go to Indonesia and be on a boat with my favorite surfers in the world, people I've looked up to my whole life and get to surf our brains out doing real things, or go stand around pretending like we're something that we're not.
Hang out in Candyland for an afternoon.
Yeah. What's happening, Chris? Where'd you go?
We went and saw this little show. This girl sounded kind of like
AJT's about 6.
Tammy Tucker and Joni Mitchell. Pretty damn good.
Was that at the Yellow Rose or where?
I don't know.
Well, let's go get some food, huh?
Let's do that, Dan. We'll pick it up again.
Yeah, sounds
All right,
good.
Cool.
Yeah, of all the songs that I've tried to write over the years, so many of them just didn't feel like the more I had played them and the more I worked on them, the worse they got. And they also like just never felt like something I wanted to share with anybody, And that one and one other one that I wrote were like, they felt like they weren't for me. They weren't about the song that I was writing. It wasn't like I wrote a song. It was like something I wanted to share. And I could remember the words without thinking about it. I didn't have to write them down. But then all the other hundreds I've tried to write went down in a blaze of glory and they just never felt like something I wanted to share with anybody, And it wasn't like they were these awesome songs. They weren't. They didn't feel good. But that one has always just felt right, and it feels like
one good one is huge.
Yeah, I'll take it.
One good one is huge.
Yeah, that's definitely what. I'll take it.
And meaningful to you.
Yeah,
you're the critic that matters.
And it's also, I'm really kind of excited about that one because I've always wanted to sing it with all my friends from home, and everybody could add their own line. It's like I feel like it's a perfect song to throw one in for yourself there. It's a nice little, So I've always felt like that was a song about just home and could be applied to anybody there. So. But man, we were talking about that. That's hard. I've definitely beat myself up about not being able to write more. Keith can
You
pump
beat
them out.
yourself up about a lot. So here's what I'm gathering, and step in anywhere I miss it. But you're a top level surfer. It meant the world to you, but competition wasn't your deal. You've come back home. You've got this amazing wife, and you guys have this amazing small farm in your hometown, and you're educating children. You brought me a soap from the Poco farmhouse. My wife is going to love this. And the packaging is beautiful.
Yeah, Grace does all that stuff.
A printed book, Slow is Fast, of a trip you took on bicycle.
Yeah.
Down the coast of California.
Yeah. It was a great trip. Yeah.
And I'm thinking that, being a man at home, working hard on a farm and surfing for passion at a top level, being thoughtful in everything you do and writing tunes is a lot. It's a lot. That's awesome. That's an awesome life. I don't think you have anything left to prove or do other than just be.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a hard thing to realize sometimes, you just like, you have this thing in you that's like, I got to do something. I got to be somebody or whatever it is. There's more I got to accomplish. And sometimes you got to just learn to freaking be like, all right, just steady as it is now, steady, like with what's going on. And, that's what our little farm's named after, it's Poco for Poco a Poco, like little by little, if we stick to what we have come to at this point, we're, that's all we need to do. We don't need to be too ambitious at this point. But, I'm pretty proud of the place. Not that, like we have so much to, we're definitely not like doing it all perfect right now, but I really am proud of the project that we have going on there at home. And, like I was saying before, when even things aren't feeling super right and kind of shadows kind of following me, that's the one thing that feels good is our little farm and what I got going on with Grace and our good friends who are helping farm out back. And, it's that little project just feels right, so I'll take it when I can get it.
And Patagonia is ongoing, right?
Patagonia has been great. Yeah. And, so we've been working well with them. I'm super excited about I'm excited about the projects they have going on right now, because with they're getting into regenerative agriculture pretty heavy. And so it's a good excuse for me to get out there. And, I've been interested in that for like the last 10 or 15 years. And it's a good excuse for me to get out there and learn more about it and, make films about it. And it's been a good deal for sure.
I was thinking it might be good if like a humorous tale of Keith. We've mentioned Chris a couple times.
Yep.
And you were saying how like envious you are of his ability to.
Yeah. Well, my brother Keith is definitely like, he has something that Chris and I don't have. He's not overly analytical, and sometimes it pisses me off and the other times I'm jealous of it, and, I remember, we were pulling up to one of those real good surf spot, and I was like, oh, it looks like this guy's out and this guy's out. Maybe we should, we'll go surf that other wave for a little bit and then we'll paddle over. And I'm thinking, I don't want to bum out the guys surfing right now. They're out there by themselves. And I'm like, look over at Keith, and he looks at me and goes, what are you talking about, dude? Fuck that. We're out there. Fuck those guys. And it's just his character, is just totally different than Chris and I. Chris
He
and I
sees it playing, huh?
Yeah, and he doesn't talk too much like Chris and I, and
That's rad.
Yeah, he's really been. I mean, I've just been so damn lucky with my family. But when I was saying when I was down and out, because he didn't analyze it all, it was like the craziest gift. it was like unbelievable gift because I hung out with him every day during that time, and he wasn't trying to fix it, you know? And that was like, you know, you can't just get that. Someone that'll be there, present with you,
Yeah.
but not trying to fix you. Sometimes that's all you need. That's what you need. That's the only thing you can get.
What would he do? He'd come over and
I was living at his house at the time, and he would just basically make me get in the car, and he'd be like, "We're gonna go body surfing," you know, and we'd go spend a couple hours in the water. You know, it wasn't nothing enjoyable about it for me, and then we'd go get some food, and he would just do that every day. And like I said, we'd listen to shitty country music, you know, and there was just nothing about it that was overthinking anything, you know, and he wasn't trying to fix it. He was just being there. And like, you know, you need everything you need everything when you're in that, you know, situation like that. But sometimes something you don't get is someone will just simply be there. And so, you know, for all the times I'm like, what the fuck were you thinking, dude? You should have called me, or this or that or the other thing. I'm thankful for how he is, for you know, what he's done for me, for sure. So
that's awesome.
I've been lucky with.
That's brotherhood right there.
Yeah, it's a crazy deal.
And him being able to just see it like for himself so clearly. He's like, this is what we're doing. Get off your butt. We're going out. We're going to grab a bite.
Yeah, and you know, it's almost like
come
that,
on,
though,
bro.
like,
we're up.
Yeah, and the thing
gone.
is it's almost like I don't even know if he knew that was what I needed. And it wasn't like he was being overly helpful.
Right.
He was just like, hey,
action.
Get in the car, dude. Like,
You're not
it's
gonna
either
sit
that
on
or
the
this.
couch. Yeah.
It's either that or this, dude. Get in the car.
Right.
And I just do it. But yeah, he was, and then Chris was helpful in his own way. It was just more of the like, hey, I heard this, and we'll figure it out, you know. But I only needed that like once every couple weeks. You know what I mean? I only needed someone to try to figure it out every once. So.
But you're doing better now, man. Like.
Yeah. A lot better for sure. And it's interesting because talking about it's not something I ever wanted to do. But then what I realized is it's like I don't care for the people it's boring to mention that you have dealt with depression, like severe depression.
I think people need to hear it.
Yeah, and it's like I realized a little bit that I'm not dying to talk about it. I'm not gonna go on too long about it. But for the kids who are dealing with it, it's worth boring a few people.
Yeah.
or confusing a few people. So
what an inspiration, man.
Yeah. So
you could be to that whole community.
Yeah. So that's an interesting deal for sure. That has been something. It's been heavily on my mind, you know, and but it's been I learned a lot. That's for sure.
It's been really awesome catching up, Dan.
Yeah. Well, come out, bring your kids out. I'll teach them how to surf.
That's the deal. Would you play us a song before you go?
Yes, absolutely. This one is about the mountains where we live up in Ojai. Take my ashes to the cesspit, it's where I wanna go. Take my ashes to the cesspit, don't stick me in no hole. Take my ashes, take my burden, take my soul and it gets free. Take my ashes to the cesspit, it's where I wanna be. So please don't ever put me where all the dead folks live. And I don't want a gravestone that tells people what I did. Just pack up Paul's old flatbed and hit the 33. Take my ashes to the cesspit, it's where I wanna be. Take my ashes to the cesspit, it's where I wanna go. Take my ashes to the cesspit, don't stick me in no hole. Take my ashes, take my burden, take my soul when it gets free. Take my ashes to the cesspit, it's where I wanna be. So when I'm finished breathing and I've said what I've said, well, wrap me in a blanket with a 22 in lead. Take me to that cold, cold creek, the last few steelhead. Take my ashes to the cesspit, and then I'll know I'm dead. Take my ashes to the cesspit, and then I'll know I'm dead.
Thanks again for listening to Drifting, presented by YETI and hosted by me, JT Van Zandt. To listen to more episodes, visit yeti.com or search Drifting on iTunes.